Hey there. Welcome to the Oaklandside 510. I'm Tasneem Raja. Each week on the 510, we catch you up on some of the biggest news in Oakland, take you behind the headlines, and preview cool events around town. Today's deep dive. Gun violence is dropping in Oakland. We take you behind the scenes into some intensive on-the-ground efforts that help explain why. Efforts that are funded by the city, but led by civilians, with first-hand experience of the kinds of conflicts that they're working to prevent. And headlines on a controversial proposal for homeless encampments, free field trips to the Oakland Museum of California, why it's taking Oakland so long to regulate Airbnbs, and more. Finally, Azucena Garcia will help you plan your weekend in Oakland. And one more time for the folks in the back, I'm asking you to answer 3 super simple questions about this podcast experiment. We have gotten dozens of responses, and they all help us figure out what to do after this 10-episode pilot wraps up. Thank you to my early birds. But we do need more input, especially from you. All right, let's get after it. All right, let's get into headlines. I'm here with Esther Kaplan, our deputy editor, to run through some of our latest reporting. How you doing, Esther?
I'm good. Nice to be here.
Okay, I want to start with a story about something that has been dragging on for nearly a decade in Oakland. Our city's attempts to regulate short-term rentals like Airbnb and VRBO.
Yeah, this is one of those stories about how a critical issue can just get stalled in our city when it doesn't have a champion. Oakland first started talking about regulating short-term rentals back in 2016, which is 9 years ago.
Yeah.
Oakland has an affordable housing crisis, and it can't help when around 2,500 apartments are turned into short-term rentals instead of being available for housing for residents. Oakland hotels also suffer, and they need the business that these platforms siphon off. But others point out that Airbnb rentals can help some homeowners make ends meet in an expensive city, and that they encourage tourism, which boosts the economy as a whole.
I mean, look, it's not an easy thing to figure out. I can see it taking some time.
Sure, but 9 years, that's a really long time to be debating this.
Yeah.
Other cities during that time, San Francisco, Berkeley, have figured out how to regulate them. Meanwhile, Oakland City Council has said hearings on the issue won't happen until next spring.
Okay, so what might be on the table when it comes to Airbnb and VRBO in Oakland?
Well, that's where it gets interesting. Some council members want to limit how many days a property can be rented out short term, maybe capped at 90 days a year. Others want to limit property owners to a single listing. And then there are questions about what to charge for the permits. Each approach has different impacts on housing supply, homeowner income, and tourism. The Airbnb lobbyists, of course, are pushing for the most permissive rules possible. They want minimal restrictions.
Speaking of the city council, I want to turn to another story from our housing reporter about a pretty significant policy proposal that would change how Oakland deals with homeless encampments.
Right. Some listeners will guess who this is. Councilmember Ken Houston, who represents District 7 in Deep East Oakland. He's proposed new encampment rules that would fundamentally alter how the city interacts with people living on the street. His plan could potentially allow the city to arrest people just for being homeless.
Wow.
Houston wants to kill a policy in Oakland that police can't issue citations or arrest people solely for camping or for their status as homeless. It would be a radical change.
Yeah, I mean, that can't not be controversial in Oakland.
Exactly. Oakland has generally taken what you might call a more service-oriented approach, trying to connect people with housing, with services, rather than criminalizing homelessness. This proposal would represent a real shift toward enforcement. It's still just a proposal, but it shows how some officials want to rethink the city's strategy as the homeless crisis continues and residents express real frustration with encampments.
Okay, I know we're going to be following this. Now, I want to move to some good news about the Oakland Museum of California.
This is great news for Oakland students. The Oakland Museum of California is eliminating barriers that have kept school classes from visiting by offering free field trips for all Oakland public schools.
All right, go OMCA. That's cool.
Exactly. The staff there found that program costs and transportation costs were the obstacles that were preventing more field trips. They raised foundation funds to cover both, making the educational tours free, and then covering transportation costs, whether it's bus fare or school bus costs.
I mean, that's huge. Field trips can be surprisingly expensive for schools, and we know a lot of schools in Oakland have very tight budgets. Okay, now tell me what's going on with Oakland restaurants.
Well, it's been a mixed bag lately. We've had some pretty sad closures, but also some exciting new spots opening up. One recent closure is the Mia Mezcaleria in Jack London Square. This was a popular spot for affordable Mexican food and margaritas, and the closure caught people by surprise, though they did hint at it possibly returning in the future.
Okay, fingers crossed. What else?
Prescott Meats Deli also closed unexpectedly. The deli had been open for only a few months at Prescott Market in West Oakland, but they'd already built a following for their loaded Reuben sandwiches and pasture-raised meats.
Yes, I will admit I will miss those Reuben sandwiches. Okay, hit me with the good news.
Obelisco is reopened on Lakeshore Avenue after shuttering their Fruitvale location last December. So some good news if you missed their ceviches, tacos, and mezcal cocktails. They're still in soft opening mode with a grand opening plan for September 16th. And for sports fans, The Hub just opened in Jack London Square. It's a watch bar with a 30-foot wall of TVs serving pub food and located within the Plank Bowling Alley.
Thanks so much, Esther. You can find all of these stories at oaklandside.org. Coming up, our conversation about gun violence prevention in Oakland. Today on Oaklandside 510, we're talking about gun violence prevention in Oakland. And I have to tell you, this is something I've been wanting to understand better for a long time. You know, someone who lives here and is raising kids here, I care deeply about Oakland being both a safe place and a just place. But in this age of urban invasions by the National Guard, the justice part feels like it's dropped out of the conversation. Roselyn Romero is our public safety reporter. She has spent months reporting on what city departments and community organizations are doing to prevent gun violence and looking closely at crime stats in Oakland. One thing her reporting really forces us to reckon with is that the people who are being hurt by gun violence and the people who are causing gun violence are often the same people, or at least people who live in the same neighborhoods and come from the same communities. And as she reports, that insight is key to understanding what actually works. Roselyn, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Okay, Roselyn, here's where I want to start. When we're talking about people who are impacted by violence in Oakland, who are we talking about?
The Alameda County District Attorney's Office issued a report that stated that Black boys and men ages 15 to 34 represented roughly half of gun homicide victims throughout Alameda County,
Wow.
despite that population being only 5% of the entire county. That report also found that a Black boy turning 15 years old today in Alameda County has about a 2% chance of dying by gun homicide before the age of 35. And really what we're seeing is that victims and perpetrators of these gun crimes are often coming from the same communities, have very similar or the same demographics, you know, the same young people who are at risk of both causing and experiencing violence are also likely disproportionately to become the same adults committing and experiencing that violence as well.
And as I learned from your reporting, Roselyn, that insight is the foundation of Oakland's most successful violence prevention program. Can you tell us about Ceasefire?
Yes, that's correct. So Ceasefire is a city-funded program that works with the Oakland Police Department and the city's Department of Violence Prevention. So what that strategy entails is identifying the small number of people who are most likely to commit violence or to be victims of that violence, specifically gun violence, and essentially reaching out to them directly and trying to intervene or prevent them from engaging in gun violence. They will invite that small number of people who are likely to engage or become victims of violence. They'll usually invite them to a community center, like a church. And the Oakland Police Department, the Department of Violence Prevention, and a bunch of community groups will essentially have a frank conversation with those individuals and tell them, hey, if you continue down this path, this is likely what would happen to you, and these are the probable repercussions for that violence. You might die, you might go to prison, and just trying to get them on a different path.
One thing that is really interesting to me is Ceasefire seems to be breaking down this kind of like binary between enforcement and prevention. Am I right in thinking that Ceasefire is actually combining both?
Exactly. So Ceasefire involves a collaboration between police, community organizations, and violence prevention. So the accountability piece of Ceasefire is where Oakland police will make arrests if the people who are participating in these call-out meetings do commit crimes. And there's also a support piece. So the Department of Violence Prevention and other community groups will employ life coaches. And these life coaches will help these participants obtain services, get jobs, connect them to housing. And just to be clear, when I say participants, I'm talking about people who are identified by the Oakland Police Department and or referred by nonprofit groups that work directly with young people and adults who are involved in the criminal justice system. You also mentioned the intervention piece. So violence interrupters will also mediate conflicts between two people or between groups of people before they escalate into gun violence. I also want to note that community leaders stress that this isn't about defunding the police, right? This is a strategic partnership, a strategic collaboration between city leaders, nonprofit groups, and the police.
Okay, how long has this been going on?
So Operation Ceasefire began in 2012 after the successes from a similar program. It's also called Ceasefire in Boston, Massachusetts. So by the following year, 2013, it was starting to look very promising. And a lot of city leaders, including the police department, they attribute the drop in homicides from 2013 through 2017 to Ceasefire. However, this progress was disrupted by the COVID pandemic. And also there was, if you can recall, the Oakland Police Department had a scandal involving multiple officers, not just in Oakland Police Department, but other law enforcement agencies throughout the county. Those officers were accused and found to have sexually abused a teenager. And so because of just this mix of the pandemic and also the city wanting to move away from the police department in how they serve the community and, you know, trying to regain the community's trust, the city began reallocating money and resources and staff away from Ceasefire.
Okay, and now that we're 5 years out from the pandemic, from, again, what I understand from your reporting, is Ceasefire is back, right?
That's right. So I spoke recently with the chief of the Department of Violence Prevention. Her name is Holly Joshi, and she started working to rebuild Ceasefire, the program, starting around January of 2024. So she was appointed by former Mayor Sheng Tao to really spearhead that project. Mayor Barbara Lee has also said that Ceasefire is a core part of her approach to public safety as well. And we're starting to see some progress. I mean, in 2024, there was a 19% decline in violent crime, including a 33% drop in homicides compared to 2023.
Wow.
But I will say that independent researchers haven't yet corroborated the claims that the current ceasefire strategy is a factor in that decline in homicides.
You know, we know there's this like real tension in Oakland between investing in police officers and investing in community-led public safety programs. I have to wonder, how does OPD feel about the fact that the city is investing in these alternative efforts that are not led by OPD?
Generally speaking, the police department is fairly supportive of these alternative programs or resources. So the current police chief, Floyd Mitchell, has been generally supportive of the ceasefire program or strategy, and he sees it as complementary to the work police are doing. His predecessor, LaRon Armstrong, was also very supportive of ceasefire during his time as chief. So, you know, both chiefs have said that police cannot solve violence alone. The police department says it is severely understaffed. So I'm going to say a couple numbers here. So right now, the Oakland Police Department has 649 officers. Also, 99 police officers are currently on some form of long-term leave, whether that's administrative, medical, military leave. So that's also a big portion of our police force who aren't working right now.
Now, I want to hear more about that work of violence interruption. I know you spent a lot of time with a gentleman named Doral Myles. Can you tell us about him?
Absolutely. So Doral Myles is a violence interrupter with the nonprofit called Youth Alive. So a little bit more about Doral's background. He was born and raised in West Oakland, and, you know, he had a pretty rough upbringing. He spent more than 9 years in prison. But after he left prison, he started working for Youth Alive as a violence interrupter, and he's been there since 2016. So it's been over 8 years. He's currently in his 50s, and he's just so thoughtful. He's incredibly compassionate, motivated by his kids. He is a father of 2 daughters, stepfather to 4. And, you know, I noticed that he's just very introspective. He reflects on the time that he spent in prison and what led up to that. And he uses those lessons in the work he does now with Youth Alive.
Okay, so tell me about what that work with Youth Alive is like on a day-to-day basis.
Right. So violence interrupters are credible messengers who can reach people police can't. All the interrupters with Youth Alive were raised in Oakland, in the community, and they are assigned to work in the neighborhoods that they were actually raised in. So their work is to go to the scenes of shootings. Sometimes they will visit people who have been shot in the hospital, at Highland Hospital specifically. And their work is to prevent retaliation. They will conduct what is called safety assessments, where they will talk to these people and tell them, hey, you know, how are you feeling? What led up to that violence? If they're comfortable sharing, and we'll try to connect them to housing. Maybe they need to relocate. Maybe they need to find a new job. Maybe, you know, some other ways that they can support. So these violence interrupters are targeting about 500 people out of Oakland's 400,000 residents.
Oh, it's a small group.
It's a pretty small group. That's right. So the way that they do that is they will have intelligence, or they will have information from hospitals, from the police department sometimes, where they will just map out, you know, who is likely to shoot or be shot. And they will really target those individuals in those neighborhoods. So when we look at the data from 2023, Youth Alive violence interrupters conducted 262 mediations, which means that they mediated conflicts between people. They also did 207 safety assessments, and they relocated 43 families who were facing threats of gun violence.
You know, the work you're describing, Roselyn, it sounds really intensive. It's highly skilled work. Just to state the obvious, like not just anybody can do this. I mean, how does somebody get into this line of work?
So there's kind of a pipeline to violence interruption. So Youth Alive has several programs at Oakland Unified Schools, so specifically Skyline, Fremont, Castlemont. And these programs are designed to introduce the concepts of violence interruption and prevention to students. And then, these students will be trained on how to be future violence interrupters.
Wow.
I also wanted to note that this is a very tough job. The just potential for burnout is very high. This is a very emotionally demanding and even sometimes dangerous work. So people need to be trained in conflict resolution, in providing trauma-informed care to people. And going back to funding, I mean, these jobs need to pay enough to retain good people.
Got it. Okay. Now, you mentioned that pipeline. I know you've spent time with some of the young people who have gone through these programs and are now themselves engaged in violence prevention. Tell me about them. What are they like?
I met several teens through Youth Alive. So I met Myles. She's 17 and from Fremont. Also from Fremont High are 16-year-old Zion and 16-year-old Amani. I also met Torian, who's 17 and goes to Skyline High School. And one thing I'll say is I was really struck by their sophistication in discussing the root causes of violence. So they will, they've talked to me about poverty, lack of job opportunities, lack of housing, and also just how media, social media, music, etc., can really influence and shape young people's thinking about violence. So I recently observed these 4 teenagers doing a workshop where they taught adults about violence prevention. This was actually at the headquarters for Youth Alive in the Pill Hill neighborhood. So there were these 4 high school students in front of maybe a dozen community members, and some their age, some older. And they had this PowerPoint presentation titled Root Causes of Violence. It was a very interactive workshop where the teens would ask the audience members, what does violence look, sound, and feel like to you? And so just to name a few of those real answers from participants, people said, violence sounds like tires screeching after a hit and run, or it looks like candles in my neighborhood where someone was killed.
And then these same teenagers will also speak with younger kids too, right?
That's right. So Youth Alive has a program called Teens on Target. It's been around for nearly 40 years.
Wow.
And Youth Alive pays these youth leaders who present these types of workshops stipends. So they're, gaining real world job experience, really. So through Teens on Target, they will deliver 6-week workshops to hundreds of middle school students throughout the Oakland Unified School District.
Wow.
So they will cover topics like conflict resolution, gun and gang violence, and even tough conversations like family and dating violence. These teenagers will often come from the same neighborhoods where violence happens. And they will reach kids who are ages 11, 12, 13, so middle school, before they get pulled into these cycles of violence. Some of these students will go on to participate in advocacy. So some have spoken to state lawmakers and gone to Sacramento to talk about changes in policy.
Okay. Talk to me about the money involved here. What does this kind of violence prevention cost compared to traditional policing?
So for scale, Youth Alive, which is the program that I've been talking about, their budget for the fiscal year ending in 2024 was less than $7 million, which is a fraction of what the Oakland Police Department spends on overtime. Also, when we look at the Department of Violence Prevention, their annual budget is roughly $24 million compared to the police department's over $300 million.
Right.
So in terms of recent funding wins. Back when the Biden administration was still in the White House, there was a $2 million grant from the vice president's office for Ceasefire life coaches. And that was granted in October of 2024. In terms of local funding, Measure NN, which passed in November, funds police, fire, and violence prevention. Looking ahead, though, however, there's also some challenges with federal funding. So recently, the Trump administration ended over $811 million in grants for community violence prevention programs. And that includes a $2 million grant for Youth Alive.
I mean, of course, right now, the future is uncertain. The Trump administration is cutting federal funding for exactly those kinds of programs. What does that mean for Oakland?
So let me take a step back a little bit. So back in May, Youth Alive and other violence prevention nonprofit organizations held a press conference where they called for these federal grants to be restored. So there hasn't been any updates on that front. So these local programs will have to rely more heavily on city funding and even county and state funding, or make cuts to services. The big irony here is that these cuts to funding are happening just as Oakland is seeing positive results.
Roselyn, before we let you go, what is one thing that you think Oakland residents should understand better about violence prevention?
That's a great question. So violence prevention works on many timelines. In the immediate timeline, there's violence interrupters who go to shooting scenes to stop retaliation in hours, days, even weeks. For more medium-term timelines, life coaches will help high-risk people and try to help them change their circumstances over several months.
Right.
In the long term, though, programs like Teens on Target are really shifting how young people think about conflict and gun violence over many years.
Right.
So all three levels of timelines are necessary and they require sustained investment, right? Violence didn't happen overnight in Oakland, and it won't disappear overnight. But we have evidence of what works. The question here is whether we'll commit to doing it consistently.
Right. Thank you so much, Roselyn. Roselyn Romero covers public safety for the Oaklandside. You can find all of her reporting at oaklandside.org. When we come back, we're going to hear about weekend events from our arts reporter. Hey, I'm here with Azucena Racia, Oakland's arts and community reporter, to help you plan your weekend. How you doing, Azucena?
Hi, Tasneem. I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing good. Okay, let's talk weekend.
Well, starting Friday night, Anthony Lucero, who was born and raised in East Oakland, is having a hometown screening of his new film, Paperback Plane, at the Grand Lake Theater. You might remember Lucero from his debut film, Isai Sushi, and now he's back with this powerful story about the relationship between a father and a son. Basically, the dad just got news that he has a terminal illness. He's a primary caregiver for his son, Billy, who lives with cerebral palsy and depends on a wheelchair. So they've got to work together to get Billy a job and make sure that he can live independently after his dad passes on. It's a really moving, powerful work from a local Oakland filmmaker.
Okay, that screening runs Friday, September 12th through Wednesday, September 17th at the Grand Lake Theater. You can go on Friday or Saturday for a Q&A with the director. Check out the website for showtimes.
Also on Friday, Ben Rosenblum is bringing his Brazilian jazz quartet to the Sound Room. He's a fantastic pianist, accordionist, and composer, and his new project should be really special.
Okay, that's Friday, September 12th at 7:30 p.m. at the Sound Room, north of Uptown. Tickets are around $30. Okay, Azu, take us into Saturday.
Saturday, we have the Oakland Chinatown Night Market taking over at 8th Street from Webster to Broadway. You'll get live music from Asian American artists like Saiji Oda, Koyomi, and Cantonese cover band Midnight Vanette. Plus, there's a car showcase by Nakayama Motorsports, food vendors, and family activities. It's such a great way to support local businesses and celebrate Asian American culture in the town.
That's going to be Saturday, September 13th from 5 to 10 p.m. and it's free.
I also want to let listeners know about an exciting film series that runs through the end of the year. It's called Black Film, Unscreened and Unstreamed. It includes early short films by both up-and-coming and established Black filmmakers, including Barry Jenkins and Ryan Coogler. It's curated by Oakland filmmakers Cheryl Fabio and Ray Shaw, along with film distributor Cornelius Moore, and they focus on Oakland filmmakers in the first half of the series. Plus, they're offering filmmaking workshops. There will be screenwriting sessions and a lesson on how to make a movie on your smartphone using Lake Merritt as a backdrop.
That's cool. I want to see those movies. Okay, these films are screening every other Thursday at 6:30 p.m. at Oak Stop downtown through the end of the year. It's free, but you do need to RSVP online. By the way, Azucena, I just want to thank you for including the Real Queer Flicks Short Film Festival in your roundup last week. I went based on your recommendation, and it was such a blast. So many fabulous short films and a lovely way to kick off Oakland Pride.
I'm glad you love that. And speaking of film festivals, I saved the biggest one for last. The 23rd Oakland International Film Festival runs through September 20th at the Grand Lake Theater. When this festival first launched back in 2002, with organizers including David Roach, they made their intentions clear: to honor Oakland's diversity, including the filmmakers who call the town home. This year's theme is Preventing Violence, Healing Our City, and they're showing powerful shorts that tackle gun violence, immigration, and the opioid crisis. Some of the films to watch for include Run, Hide, Fight, Growing Up Under the Gun. It's a short documentary made by student journalists from all over the country, including Oakland, about growing up with so much gun violence. De Aquí, de Allá, From Here, From There is about an undocumented attorney who fought for Dreamers in front of the Supreme Court. And one other one, Coming Home, which uses this really interesting blend of animation and live action to tell a story about how opioid addiction impacted a family.
Wow, fall is all about powerful filmmaking in Oakland. We love to see it, and we know you love to cover it. Okay, we're going to link to your full events roundup in the show notes with all of these details. Thank you so much, Azucena.
Thanks for having me.
That's the show. Thank you so much for listening to Oaklandside 510. And sorry if you've heard me say this before, but we're really hoping that more of you will answer 3 easy questions about this podcast. There's a link at the very top of the show notes. We just want to know, how often do you read Oaklandside? What do you like about this podcast? What could we do better? Here's why we're asking. This whole thing so far, Oaklandside 510, this has been an experiment. We're trying this out for 10 episodes, and then we're going to decide whether and how to keep this going. The folks who've already written in and you can help us figure that out. Also, please consider supporting the work that we do here at the Oaklandside by becoming a member. Our reporting is free for you and all your neighbors to check out, but yeah, it costs real money to report on Oakland with the depth and attention that this city deserves. Over 4,000 Oaklanders are keeping the Oaklandside going by donating an average of just $10 a month, and I really hope you'll join them. If your organization would like to advertise on this podcast, we would love to talk to you. That email address is editors@oaklandside.org. Thank you to Esther Kaplan for walking us through the headlines. Thank you to Roselyn Romero for helping us better understand how gun violence prevention works in Oakland. Thank you to our arts reporter, Azucena Racia, for keeping us in the know on weekend activities. Thank you for listening. And thank you to every one of the 4,000 Oaklandside members who keep this work going by donating around $10 a month. This show was produced and engineered by Callie Rhodes. Esther Kaplan was our editor. I'm Tasneem Raja. See you next week.